And may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be always acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, welcome again to Holy Cross. We're so glad that you have joined us today. Back in the 60s, psychologists were starting, they set out to do an experiment to try to figure out why is it that people group up. Human beings have this kind of proclivity towards getting into groups, us, them, kind of dividing into groups. And what they were trying to figure out was, what were the bare essentials of kind of this group identity? Like, what were the lowest common denominators that human beings grouped by? They had a couple theories or guesses. They thought maybe it might be ethnicity, that human beings kind of, like begets like, and you want to hang out with people that look like you, and maybe the fear of the other, someone who looks different than you, that there's something kind of maybe animalistic in our brain that kind of recoils from that. So maybe these group dynamics, maybe that bare essential of why human beings group together is race. Or maybe they thought it was competition, that there's this inherent competitive nature within humanity, that we just compete with one another, and so we get into groups. Maybe it was shared experiences, that we go through something together, we bond together, or perhaps it was grievances, injustice, that people get together based on the fact that we have all been wronged. And sometimes injustice actually helps to kind of encourage or maybe even bolster a group identity. It really is us versus them, because they're coming after us, right? Politicians can use that to their advantage, believe it or not. Now, and see, that joke goes both ways, just so we're clear. Okay, so What they did when they set out to do this study, they got people together, and they and one of the things that they did to kind of control it is that they never let these people meet each other. They wanted to kind of start from the get-go. You didn't know who the other people were. You never met them. You had nothing in common with them. And what they found was that the bare essential, the one thing necessary, the one thing that the common denominator that human beings group up based on was none of the things that they thought. That the one bare essential that human beings needed or kind of gravitated towards to say this is the us versus them was nothing less than the opportunity to group up. Like, that's kind of a joke. No, like literally all that was required for human beings to form an us versus them was the opportunity to form an us versus them. That what they found in this experiment was that regardless of race, ethnicity, regardless of shared experience, people didn't know the race of the people. They didn't know they had no shared experience with them. They had no grievance with them. The only way they grouped them was purely arbitrary things, like they would say this group likes this painter and this group doesn't, even if they didn't know who the painter was. You were just put in you're the pro, Rockwell, paint group, and you're the anti-Rockwell group. Okay, and then pretty quickly those identities became the real things, or it'd be grouped up on basis of what you ate for breakfast that day. And what they found was pretty quickly these groups became real us versus them, to the point where people would privilege their group over against the other group. They would even privilege their group over against themselves. They would be willing to sacrifice their own goods, their own means, their own progress in order to help the group, even though the group identity was totally arbitrary and meaningless. That what psychologists found was that this inherent need to group up, to create an us versus them, to be divided with other people, is hardwired into us. That it is deep within our subconscious that we naturally gravitate towards groups, and therefore we naturally gravitate towards finding people that are not in the group and creating a barrier. I mean, you and I know this. We don't really need anyone to tell us this. But the importance of this means that all of the things that people group up based on are relatively meaningless. And that the solution to fixing this problem of human division will not come from dealing with the things that we divide up amongst ourselves. The cure to human relational division is not by addressing racism, because the people will just replace it with another thing. That sin, or that need for a fear, a need for protection, a need for identity, a need for belonging, all of that exists under the surface. And then what human beings do is we grab hold of identities and say, okay, this is now, we're together. Why are we together? Because we're all the same race. Oh, okay, that's why. That's not why. You got together because we desperately need to have an us versus them. We need to have a division between us and them in order for us to feel okay, for us to feel safe, for us to feel protected. And this need to be a part of a group identity is so strong that it can supersede real group identities, like family, or like shared experiences. You know this, in the past 5 to 10 years, how many of us have seen families really profoundly, and I really do mean really profoundly, wrecked by politics? Where people don't talk to each other anymore. These are people with real common denominators, like literally DNA that is shared. Family, who because of external connections, like, oh, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, now they don't talk. Us versus them. I'm not with them. You're literally the same DNA as them. Like, you literally are with them. And it's like, no, I don't talk to her anymore. We don't talk anymore. How many of us have seen, real solid relationships genuinely affected by pretty arbitrary and obscure, group dynamics? And yet it's a real thing. Now that's if the group dynamic is arbitrary. How much more impossible would it be for this kind of dividing wall between people to come together if the separation was a real, not arbitrary, but a real distinction? And this is what the early church was dealing with. Not only are they human beings like us, and they have the same group dynamics and all those things, but the distinction between Jews and Gentiles that the early church was dealing with was not an arbitrary distinction. It was a distinction set up by God himself. The Jews were his chosen people, and everybody else was not. He chose a people. They were his. He said, I will be your God. You will be my people. That's a promise I give to you, not to everybody else. These were real distinctions set up by God, and yet in the midst of the church, in the midst of the early church, what you see is Gentiles being brought in to this group. And one of the big struggles, if you read the New Testament, of the early church is trying to figure out, how do we do that? Because everything in me says that they are the them. They've been the them all of my life. It's been us versus them. And all of a sudden, now we have to create this new group where people who were previously completely divided, people who were previously completely enemies, are now trying to figure out how to do this together. And what the early church experienced is similar to what you and I experienced, in that a sense of hopelessness in actually overcoming these barriers, in actually overcoming these group dynamics. If it's so endemic to our nature that all we need to create a separation between us and other people is the opportunity to do so, how much more impossible is it going to be for people to get together when God himself has said, hey, it's my people and everybody else? And yet that's exactly what Paul is addressing in Ephesians chapter 3, when he says, for this reason, I, Paul, a prisoner of Christ Jesus, on behalf of you Gentiles, assuming that you have heard of the stewardship of God's grace that was given to me for you, how the mystery was made known to me by revelation, as I have written briefly. When you read this, you can perceive my insight into the mystery of Christ. When we hear mystery, we kind of think of something dark, something mysterious, something unknown. When Paul's talking about mystery, often the best word for it could be something along the lines of like a previously held secret. It's not something that's dark and mysterious and unknown. Rather, that's something that just hadn't been revealed yet, but now is being revealed. And Paul is saying that the mystery of Christ, which was not made known to the sons of men in other generations, as it has now been revealed to his holy apostles and prophets by the Spirit, the mystery is that the Gentiles are, and he says three things, fellow heirs, members of the same body, and partakers of the promise in Christ Jesus through the gospel. What Paul is saying, and this is the crisis of the early church that we get bits and pieces of throughout the New Testament letters. The crisis of the early church is that the Jews who have followed Christ and were kind of founding this new thing called a church, were also at the same time having to bring in and welcome in and get rid of all of their old prejudices and all of their old dividing lines that God had actually given them, and try to create a new people based on all of these Gentiles coming in. And Paul's saying they are fellow heirs, members of the same body. Now, it would have been actually pretty easy. I think, most of the Jews back then, I think, would have been fine with Gentiles coming in and being like the B team, Gentiles coming into the church, and we got the pews for the Jews up here, we got the pews for the God's people, the really God's people, and then now in the church, we're doing this new thing where we're letting some other people in. And they can fill in the back rows, they can fill in some of the seats, but don't start to think that you belong here as much as we do, right? Don't start to think that you have a right to be here as much as we do. We were here first. We've been waiting for this a long time. We've been praying for the Messiah to come, and he's finally here. Don't think that you can just waltz right in and be one of us. Paul is saying that they are members of the same body and fellow heirs. It would be like at the reading of the will, when the will is being read, and they say, not only do the kids get part of the inheritance, but also the yard man. He gets equal share of the inheritance. You, if you're like me, as a child, would be like, excuse me, no, I was here a long time. I had to put up with them for a long time. I took care of them as they were dying. I did a lot here, and fellow heirs, not so much. Sure, give him a little something to remember him by, but not fellow heirs. And yet this is exactly what Paul is saying, that the Gentiles are fellow heirs, members of the same body, partakers of the promise. Now the question is, how can that actually happen? And this is a real question even 2,000 years later. I mean, we are not dealing with how Jews and Gentiles can kind of coincide within the same church. But you and I, we do have divisions. We have differences. We have things. There are a million us versus thems in this church. And I'm not even saying like we're a bad church. We are human beings. We have all kinds of things. Us, them, Democrats, Republicans, races, perspectives on things. We have different, there are actual Episcopalians in the room, and then there are not Episcopalians in the room, and that's wonderful. We have all kinds of different things. I mean, how can you ever create a unity when there's so much division, and when our own subconscious is like demanding it? I need these things. I need a group that I can belong to. I need a group that I can say, oh, I'm not with them. Well, Paul says, fellow heirs, members of the same body, and partakers of the promise in Jesus Christ through the gospel. That in Paul's view, there's something about the gospel that broke down these dividing walls that we put up between each other. that began to kind of take them a step down, maybe just lower the fence by a foot so you could see over it into your neighbor's yard and see that, oh, they're a real person. They have their yard looks as bad as mine. That would be my yard. The gospel would actually begin to break down some of these divisions that we have created and begin to actually create something new. And here's the beautiful part. That if the gospel is able to break down a division that even God ordained between Jew and Gentile, how much more can the gospel break down arbitrary divisions like Democrat and Republican? I mean, how much more can the gospel break down arbitrary divisions between whatever, us versus them, that you and I create? What the New Testament offers is a picture of a people that are united together, that are actually loving one another, even though we have very real differences. And the question is, how is that possible? Well, the one way that's going to happen is if there's a deeper identity that you and I can all grab hold of. That if there is a deeper group dynamic underneath all of these other dynamics that we can all identify with. And the beauty of the gospel is that what it does is it levels the playing field of the human experience. And what it says is that before God, there is no Jew and Gentile, male, female, rich, poor, powerful, not powerful, whatever. That all of these distinctions, while out in the world, they're helpful. They're helpful to figure out, how to go through the world. And, nations are good and cultures are good. We're not, there are some religions that try to destroy all that and create this one thing. We're not saying that. But within these walls, all of those divisions are checked at the door, and that there's a deeper identity that you and I all hold to. That is true beyond race, beyond politics, beyond culture, beyond time. It's true of us today. It's true of people 2,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago, that there's a deeper identity that's true of all humanity, that we can all come as one together. And that is the fact that you and I are actual sinners. And no one is more of a sinner than anybody else. And we are all in desperate need of a good word from God. That God is not creating us versus thems anymore. But at the foot of the cross, all of us find a God who is merciful and kind towards sinners. That deeper identity is something that is more true of us than where we vote in the ballot box. It's more true of us than what our 501, not 501, whatever, the 401, our money. That's more true of us than our status, more true of us than any of the things that we hold on to as something that really matters. That the truth of the gospel is that you and I are sinners, and we're all sinners in desperate need of God's grace, and He has given it to the full. He has welcomed us all to His table. There was a movie that came out at the end of last year called Knives Out, Wake Up Dead Man. I think that was the title. It was the third movie in this series called Knives Out, and it portrays these two priests. It all takes place in a little church. It's like a murder mystery in a church where they kill the priest. So don't watch it, actually. But in it, it's a picture of there's two. The movie kind of revolves around these two priests. And two very different ways in which they go about, they view the world. One is Monsignor Wicks, who's the Monsignor of the church. He's kind of running the church. And he views the entire world through one giant us versus them. And he views the entire world as his people versus everybody else out there. And what he has done over the course of decades, is whittled the church down to only the people who are most loyal to him. Any guests who come in, he berates them. talks about how they are sinners, talks about how they have no place in this church. He does it kind of subversive, like he doesn't say you are, but he'll just be like, people who wear red shirts, people who wear, khakis. And it's like one guy in a red shirt and khakis, like, okay, I'll leave. And what he's done is he's created a very loyal church it's loyal to him, that will give him everything that he wants, that will protect him from any of his excesses, which there are many, and a dying church, and particularly a congregation that he actually secretly despises. So that's Monsignor Wicks. And churches do get like that, believe it or not, where there are times when churches will become so inward focused, so driven towards the people in the room that we will begin to see other people who could walk through the doors. We will begin to see other people out in our neighborhoods as kind of almost enemies. No, don't come in here, because if you come in here, you might change something. If you come in here, it might not be the church that I used to have. In other words, we try to create something that we can control, and anything that's a threat to that control, we want to kick out. All right, and then you have Father Judd. Father Judd is the young priest, the curate, who shows up at the parish, and he is operating from a different wavelength. And what his goal is to try to reach people with this strange idea, strange to Monsignor Wicks, that God actually loves people. That God actually loves people who are a mess. And the whole movie is how these two approaches to church interrelate. And I'll let you watch it to kind of see which one wins in the end. But at one point, Father Judd says a line that I just want to say as we close. He's being interviewed by some other priests. And the older priest says, we need fighters today, but we need to fight the world, not ourselves. A priest is a shepherd. The world is a wolf. And Father Judd, quickly and respectfully, says, no, I don't believe that, Father, respectfully. And he says this: if you start fighting wolves, before you know it, everyone you don't understand is a wolf. And I still have that fighting instincts. I gave into it today. Then he says this: but Christ came to heal the world, not fight it. I believe that. And then he says, it's this, not this. And then he says, I just want to be a good priest. I want to show broken people like me the forgiveness and love of Christ. The world needs that so bad. And I think for us, as we begin a new year, we look forward to the annual parish meeting next week and a year ahead for us. I hope that continues to be our heartbeat. That we are not here to create a new us versus them. We're not here to win some political battle that will change every 3-4 years. We're not here to reform people and fix people and make sure that everybody gets their act together. We're simply here to show the world the forgiveness and love of Christ. That Christ came to heal the world. And he welcomes all sinners to himself. And that all of us, regardless of what group divisions we might have, can find a unity in that. That we are all sinners, but we are all desperately loved by God. Amen.